You just have to keep going. You have to want it enough to wake up tomorrow and do the same thing over.
This was me being a hustler.
The only way that I've gotten to this point in my life is to try to treat people the way I want to be treated.
Welcome to Ground Zero Growth with your host, Sam Sapp, owner of Lockbon.
Hey everybody, Sam Sapp here. Welcome to the podcast. I'm joined today with my guest, James Gorman with Hard to Hack. How are you doing today, James?
Doing wonderful.
Fantastic.
Doing way better than I deserve.
Yeah, and I feel like I need to shout out Mike Beard because that's where you and I met through Mike.
Mike, correct.
Yes, and an organization called EO is where me and Mike met.
Yeah.
I always love kind of following the
breadcrumbs.
Sometimes people are like, "How do you know so and so?" And it's like,
Yep.
well, you never. It's wild.
So Mike and I go way back, and Mike's always been big in EO, but I've never been big in EO because my goal is to have a company that I would never want to be in EO. So because it's just. I don't want to have a company where I'm focusing on growth. I want to have a company where I'm focusing on taking care of myself, employees, and customers.
Gotcha. Okay, I see what you're saying. All right, fair enough. I could plug into that.
So
I get that.
If I'm making enough to put my kids through school and pay the mortgage and keep my wife happy, that's all the money I need to make.
Okay. So tell me about where are you out of, by the way, for the sake of the podcast?
I'm out of the Northern Virginia area, but I service customers from Dublin, Ireland to Los Angeles, California.
Dublin.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Well, I'll be.
So it doesn't really matter where they are. Some of them are fairly large. They have operations in 4 or 5 other countries. Some of them are manufacturers who actually have operations in Taiwan and China and Vietnam. Others have operations in Colombia and Brazil and Argentina and Eastern and all over Europe.
Okay, so perfect segue into obviously they through Hard to Hack. Tell us about Hard to Hack.
So Hard to Hack is really an advisory and consultancy firm. Our idea is you take the people say, I need to be secure. How do I get secure? Or how do I get compliant? I need to have a SOC 2, or I need to have a HIPAA, or I need to have PCI, or I need to have CMMC, something that my customer's requiring me to get so that they can prove that they can be secure. But the reality is a certification doesn't make you secure. So I build a security program. I train the employees around that program. And by making that program following the basic rules of cybersecurity, where you have governance, reconnaissance, and all the basic rules of cybersecurity, it allows you to then be secure first. And if you're secure, you're going to be compliant. But if you're not compliant, you can be compliant and unsecure. So my goal is to get in there, build the program for the organization, train their people, and then get out. And I call them my graduates.
There you go.
So they graduate the program.
Okay. I hate to start it this way, but also I want to hear a horror story, because the first thing that kind of comes to my mind, you and I are definitely in similar waters, and the first thing that comes to my mind is the medical clinics I've walked into that, didn't have a firewall. They were still using Microsoft Office from 15 years ago, because that was back before they were charging subscriptions, and so they wanted to, it was almost nightmarish. And so in the same sort of way, I'm eager to hear a good horror story for you, and it could be a lost cause one or one where you turned it around. That's kind of your call.
Well, the easiest sale you ever make is a friend refers you to somebody, because if you have a friend that's in tech, and then somebody calls them and says, hey, I've just been hacked, what do I do? The easiest referral is when they say, call Gorman. So there have been, over the last, I've been doing this since 2015, and over the last 11 years, there's probably 2 or 3 a year of those calls. One time, this is the one for most small business people, and I say small, I mean less than $20 million in revenue. They need to really listen to and hear about it. And I'll call the guy Barry. Barry had an investment management firm where he managed investments of some not A-list celebrities, but in the DC area where I live, they were known names, athletes, politicians, what have you. And Barry called a friend the Friday before Thanksgiving, and he's like, "I think I've been hacked." And then that friend called me, and what we figured out is Barry, really, really smart guy, way smarter than I am. But Barry is like most people; they don't think about things, and his passwords were leaked on the dark web, and somebody got a hold of his passwords, and he kept losing business. And what had happened, he had 3 people come up in renewal for the next year, and they said, "No, we're going to go with somebody else." And he's like, finally he said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, this other firm underbid you by about 10%. And he said, "Who would know what my pricing was?" Because he was being, and it was the 3 of them were 10%. So apparently, not proven. And when I disengaged from Barry, he was going to call the FBI. I don't think they did anything, because they generally don't, unless it's really high dollar value and high stakes. But what happened to Barry, and Barry is a pseudonym. Barry's not his real name. What happened to Barry was, when his data got leaked, he used the same email and same password everywhere, and no multi-factor authentication. Except where the banks, thank God for him, the banks where he managed all of his trades and all of his everything to require multi-factor authentication. So none of his bank accounts, none of his trading accounts got touched, but his email and his Salesforce, I think it was HubSpot, but I don't know, I don't want to be clear, his CRM were hacked, and the person was reading his proposals. So he was able to say, "I'll do all the same things for 10% less." And it was really hard for him to understand how that could happen. And then we did a search, and we saw that it was breached. And then we found out that all of his passwords were his business email name and the same password. So somebody just went around and figured it out, and they were reading his emails, they were reading his HubSpot or his CRM. And again, I'm saying HubSpot because I think that's what it was. I'm not 100% sure. And we were able to build a security program for him and for his company. He's got 10 employees and a lot of money under management. And we built the security program for him. We locked down everything. We changed all the passwords. We used a password manager. We added multi-factor authentication everywhere. Excuse me. And we were able to recover, but he'd still lost 3 long-term clients for 10% that he for 10% that he wasn't able to recover. So that's one of the horror stories that you get when you get called because you're hacked. Another crazy story is a $500 million electronics manufacturer. Now, you would think that a $500 million electronics manufacturer has pretty good security protocols in place. And to be quite frank, yes, they do. But they don't. So they have multi-factor, except for some people. They have a VPN access, including service accounts, because they just open it up to the whole Active Directory, as opposed to limiting the people who could use the VPN service, check them off. But the print service, and it wasn't the print service, but it's something like the print service, was allowed, because it was a member of the Active Directory, was allowed to VPN in. Somebody got in with the print service credentials, started put a payload on there and did a ransomware attack on them. Now, lucky for them, they had people all over the world, and their system administrator in Taiwan said, "Hey, that's weird activity going on that server for 3:00 in the morning the night before Memorial Day," because they always seem to happen right. The breaches always seem to happen right around the holiday, so they can go for 2 days or 3 days and not get discovered. So he isolated the server, shut it down. So they didn't lose a whole lot. They never had to stop shipping. They never had to stop producing, but they had to invest. They spent about $5 million to recover from this, and they didn't have to pay the ransom because they had decent backups and they had them in multiple places. And that was because they never turned off their old backup system. So one of the backups were corrupted, the other ones were good. So, but again, it was basic blocking and tackling that wasn't done while they had a certification. They had an ISO 27001 certification. They thought they were secure. They had all the right things in place, but they had exceptions. And those exceptions are what killed them.
How do you, this is kind of, I feel like this is the question right here. And it's almost more business than tech, but this is.
Everything I do is at the intersection of business and tech.
So here's the question. Everyone has an IT company or a IT person or an IT department or a cybersecurity, and
Yep.
you nailed it. They've even got the compliance vehicles that they're supposed to follow. I
Right.
mean, while on one hand, I think perfect is a unattainable goal. How do they make sure that they're at least, like, that one even sounded better than most for the most part, right? They had the
Right.
people watching. Somebody slipped.
Look at MGM. I mean, look at the MGM problem. I mean, MGM has the MGM has a $30 million a year cybersecurity budget. How many of our customers would love to have a tenth of that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
Right.
so even in the case of how do you look, and it's a common sales tactic too. It's like these horror stories that, like, with you and me, we've seen them. This is where I tell people, when I started, my horror stories used to be hypothetical, and I'd say as much. They don't have to be hypothetical anymore.
No.
This has happened. So how do we engage with the person that's like, I've got it. Haven't had a review in 3 years, but we're good. We're covered.
Well,
And how do you say, when was the last backup you took without sounding like some shady? Because that in and of itself,
no.
when was the last time you checked backups?
The good news about the way I've structured my business is I don't sell services. I don't sell software.
Right.
I don't sell things. I'll present. I have the people that I like. I present the company contracts with the service provider. For example, for a backup provider, I don't sell backups. I don't want to be in that business. Or they have they need to do one of the companies I was working with needed to do a cloud to cloud migration from Azure to AWS because they were going to be acquired and the acquiring company wanted them on AWS. So long story short is we moved them to AWS. I brought in a company that was a $2 million contract. That company, a friend of mine runs the company. He's a friend of mine because we work in multiple companies together. We met in a company. I was the acting CISO or the fractional CISO, and he was the service provider, and we got along. He did fantastic work. I put him in front of everybody else who he could help. And so we did the migration. I make nothing on it. And I tell that to my customers. So anybody I refer to you is not paying me to refer them to you. They're people I do, and I have no skin in the game. So it's a lot easier coming from that standpoint to say, hey, when was the last time you did a backup? Well, I don't even go there. I said, when was the last time you checked your backups? When was the last time you restored something from backup? Do you even know you have good backups? And if I'm talking to the CTO or the head of IT, most of the time that answer is no. Nope, we haven't. We just do the backups and they run. We never check them. Why? Because the IT guy is so busy trying to keep the printers working and the CEO's cell phone email working, he doesn't have time to do the basic blocking and tackling to make sure that he's not only secure but resilient. And that's what the whole idea behind cybersecurity really is how do you make yourself resilient in a world where everybody's trying to steal from you?
So I have a theory on this then, and I'd like to get your take. An analogy I've so a lot of what would bring us in the door typically on smaller accounts might be, hey, my partner takes 5 days to resolve a ticket, right? Seems like a basic enough ticket, took 5 days to solve. And then, that's honestly what'll win us the contract. We show up, act like, we're going to be a better partner. We're clearly going to take your needs in a higher account. And then to your point, we jump in and it's like backups haven't been checked. These other things haven't been checked. And it hit me the moment you're kind of slipping in the reactive, you've already seceded ground in the proactive, which is checking backups, which is checking service accounts, which is, would you somewhat agree with that analogy? Is that said to be true?
Well, I think that the problem is you're addressing a symptom of the problem. So I think that the problem is, it's not that the IT guy says, I'm not going to check the backups, right? Or it's not that the MSP who you brought in is saying, I'm going to take 10 days to get back to this people. It's that there's and if a CEO is listening, please don't get mad at me, but there's a focus on the CEO is IT is 100% cost center. And if you look at it objectively, it is. But in reality, what you're trying to do is it's insurance. You wouldn't run your business without the proper level of insurance. The
CEO's IT cost center insurance.
The CTO sees it, or the CIO, CEO, they see IT support and cybersecurity as a cost center, and it takes a lot of wrestling to get them out of that mindset. And one of the ways that one of the benefits of what I've been doing for the last couple of years, I've been working a lot with the private equity firms who are on the boards of these companies, and getting them to understand that it's an insurance policy, and if you don't spend enough on your insurance and you have an accident, you're liable for everything else. So, and all the disruptions around that. So having a backup system is good, but can that backup system pull a file individually off of it that got accidentally or deleted, or can you restore your entire systems from those backups?
Yeah. And that's a solid angle to take, because an issue I start to know as a company starts to grow to the point to where the CEO and the CFO's position have been split.
Yep.
It almost if we're not careful, it becomes an almost abdicated thing where it's like CFO's number one priority, rightfully so, is to cut costs. Well, hey, IT can be a heavy cost.
But he's not going to cut. Well, one of the things that I advise the IT guys who I work with is to stop talking about I need a new tool and start talking about cost replacement. So if I'll just use a really easy one. I'm going from $75 to $100 million in the next 2 years, and we're going to start delivering product to Walmart, and Walmart's going to require us to be just in time, because that's what they do. And any interruption in the production of our stuff, which is dependent in some part or in all on an IT service, scanners, scales, printers, address labels, all those things are an IT function. They function on IT equipment, and I can't afford to. I can't have that go unmonitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I need to hire a security operations team. Well, I can hire one guy. It's going to cost me $150,000, $200,000 a year, fully loaded on that guy, and then I have him for eight hours a day, 40 hours a week. And then I have to replace him if he gets sick. And I have to replace him if he goes on vacation. But let me spend $150,000 on a managed security service, and I get 4 guys 24/7, 7 days a week, and I don't have to have those headaches. Those headaches are on somebody else. So cost replacement in that way. Cost replacement in, okay, we need to upgrade our Microsoft licensing fees. Lots of times you buy the business standard or the business basic, and it comes with very little control. So your cost replacement on that is, I can get everybody on Intune. I can reduce the server size that I have here at the office and have it running in the cloud, and I don't have to hire 3 new people to manage everybody's system because I'm managing it remotely through Intune. So I'll give you back those costs. And then you're talking about a $50,000 a year. I'm making the numbers up, but it's a $50,000 a year bill. Okay, that sounds like it's enormous, but I'm already paying 30. So I'm offsetting $20,000 in the upgrade, and then and then I'll be able to delay hiring that person for another 6 months or another year. So
Yeah.
so if you're the IT guy, you have to think about offsetting your costs to talk the CFO's language, and you have to talk about offsetting the risks so that you're talking the CEO's language, and that's
Yeah.
kind of where it is in this space right now.
Man, the underutilization of 365 too, I feel like is just the undersung thing of the. I mean, a good analogy might be people are buying a Rolls Royce to get from point A to point B. There's just
Well,
it's a good product, but there's so much you get into it.
That's
the
the problem
default
with
is
SaaS. So that's the problem with SaaS. So look at Salesforce.
Yeah.
How much does Salesforce do?
I haven't used Salesforce personally, but it's my
Okay.
understanding that it's a
It
deep
does
and
everything.
wide chasm.
But
Yeah.
all people use it for is sales funnels, measuring the sales cycle. So they're using 20% of it. 80% of it goes unused. And you're vulnerable for that 80%. So if there's a vulnerability in that 80%, you're going to be abused by it. You're also paying for that 80% when you only want 20% of it. And that's with Microsoft. That's with Salesforce. That's with Okta. If you have a single sign-on through Okta, you're paying the premium prices for what the the Fortune 500 needs, because that's who they built it for, or the federal government. They built it for the big guy. They built it for the 20,000 person organization, and you're only using a small part of it. But you're responsible both in security and in and financially for the other 80%. So one of the projects that I really liked doing, I was working with a partner, and we did an evaluation of their tech stack, and we looked at the overlap of what their tech stack was. And this is probably a $200 million food manufacturer, or they process foods and they sell them at Wegmans and Kruger's and kind of the higher end, not the Aldi's, not the Walmarts, but the higher end
retailers,
grocery stores. And they had 30 tools that were labeled security or IT. They had 30 different tools. None of them talked to each other. None of them were configured. They were just there. They were told they needed it by the guy who was there. They forced him out.
No, I know exactly.
They're told they needed it. It was, and they bought the lie that the vendor told them. You don't need anything else. All you need is Stroudreich.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All you need is cloud. Cloud security.io, and you'll never have to buy another tool. And it's true if you have somebody who knows how to use that tool. I mean, I'll pick on Splunk. If you buy Splunk to be your SIM and then your event manager, and you use it for a lot of different things, you never have to buy another thing. But you have to have 3 people who know how to code in Splunk and run the queries and do all that stuff and set all that stuff up. And you're not going to have that at a $200 or $500 million a year manufacturer, builder, contractor, whose job isn't IT. You might have that if you're running a SaaS company, but you're not going to have that if your real job is making something better, faster, and cheaper than you did yesterday.
Yeah.
So, if it's taking care of a patient, if it's taking care of a client, you're not going to have that budget because your focus must be elsewhere. If your focus is on your internal IT and you're a $100 million company with a $10 million IT budget, you're spending money. You're losing money because you're probably operating at a 15% overall gross margin. So now you take 10% of that and put it in IT and security tools, and you got nothing. And then your investors aren't happy.
Yeah. And you're not, I mean, you're not wrong. It takes a lot of work to configure each one appropriately. And what's interesting is, I mean, you mentioned like what, 5-10 tools.
Well,
Experience tells me 3 to 4. And I would be interested in hearing your take, but
well,
3 to 4 well-configured tools.
It really depends on the size of the company and what you're trying to protect. Right.
Yeah,
So
fair.
so if I have a if I'm a doctor's office with 4 doctors and 15 employees, I probably need 3: an antivirus, or XDR,
Yep.
an email scanner, and some firewalls. If I'm a clinic with and I'm focusing on healthcare because that's kind of where you are. If I'm a clinic and I have 30 doctors and 100 employees, then I have to have more than that. So
Yeah.
it really depends upon the size of that, but all of them have to protect the data by law because of HIPAA.
Well, and it's interesting. So we got more on healthcare, but just we're actually a lot in law and accounting.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, although healthcare definitely needs plenty of it for sure. But okay, so now's a good opportunity. If you don't mind, I'm gonna throw you a hard curveball here, and I feel like we're gonna go over a little bit. Okay, that's fair. But before we go too far, we're gonna go over a little bit. Are you gonna be okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. All right, so the curveball here is this. We're going to take the proverbial dial. This is when kind of the traditional programming starts. And we're going to grab that. We're going to step into a time machine, grab the dial, and we're going to hit rewind. And we're picking up James Gorman, and we're dropping into his high school self. You think 16, 17, 18, 19, that era. And I like this era because in my mind, that's when we're just coming out of, I'm going to be a space, pirate. Yeah, space pirate. Yes. And into, hey, you need to do something for a living.
Yeah.
You're going to have to make some money. I'm going to kick you out of the house. What does James think he's going to be?
So well, I really did grow up wanting to be a pirate and sail the 7 seas and, swing from the yard arms up until when I was about 14. Then I kind of outgrew that, and I didn't know what I wanted to do for a little bit. And then I was playing with radios, and I was playing with build your own radio back in the when was that? That was the mid 80s, where you'd hook everything up. You'd have a press board, and I'd make an AM radio. Then I made a transmitter. So I kind of thought I wanted to do something with electronics, and so when I was 14, my mother passed away, so things got different in my house. My dad came to me when I was 17, about to graduate from high school. He said, he used to call me Jimmy, and I hate being called Jimmy. So he said, Jimmy, I can afford to send 4 of my kids to school, and you're the one I think can make it without school. So you're out. So he told me before I graduated that he wasn't going to be able to pay for my college, although he's already paying for my sisters and planned to pay for my other 2 sisters and my brother's college. So, okay, what do you do?
How many siblings?
There are 4. There was a brother and 3 sisters.
Okay, all right.
I was one of 5. So he said he could afford to pay for 4, and so he picked me. I was the oldest boy, so I think that's why he picked me. And I think it's also because my sister was in school and he got her tuition bill, because I've seen tuition bills. I've gotten a bunch of them, and they are steep. So I was like, what am I going to do now? And then, I tried for a semester at the community college and working and paying my own way, and that wasn't working out. So I decided to join the Navy. So I got to be an anti-pirate. So I joined the Navy, and in the Navy, you take the test, and they say, well, what do you want to do? You can do whatever you want. And they said, electronics. And they said, okay. So they sent me to electronics school. So I joined the Navy to learn electronics. I was in the pipeline for electronics technician. And then when I graduated the electronic technician school, I got to pick, and I picked cryptographics for my secondary school. So I went to school on how to maintain and repair and work the U.S. Navy cryptography. So then I got to the ship and we installed something in, I want to say it was 88 or 89, but it was it was called JOTS. Who knows what the acronym meant, but it was something stupid. Joint Officer and Tactical Control or something like that. And it was to relay. It was the first time they used, they extended the sensors of the ship back to the commander in theater. So we were able to tell the commander in theater where we were and where all the contacts we had were. And so of course that has to be encrypted. So it was a satellite encrypted TCP/IP network in 1988. So this was before the internet, before anybody knew what TCP/IP was outside of Southern California or Northern California. And that's what I got into. Got out of the Navy in 92, went to work for GE, got into some internet, started an internet services company after 2 years. So I started an internet service company in 94, sold it in 95, grew that, went to work for a big six firm.
Well, we're fast forwarding it along here.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
so
I'm in my 30-second speech.
You're okay. Yeah, it's fine. Hey, so and it's interesting. I'm realizing you're probably one of the most people. You know what a Caesar cipher is? This kind of
Yes.
like maybe a duh
Yes.
for you and I. Okay,
Yeah.
I ask. I don't get to talk to a lot of geeks that know what a Caesar cipher is.
Do you know what a Fibonacci chain is?
I know what the Fibonacci. Yeah. I
Okay.
couldn't tell you it exactly, but I know roughly what we're talking about. It's the sequence of numbers.
It's a quasi-randomization of numbers.
Yeah.
And I say it's quasi-randomization because you have to have a key. And that key is quasi-random, which is why given enough compute power, any cipher is breakable until you get to the real random stuff, which is beyond, which we are just there. So we got quantum. When we go into quantum cryptography, we have truly random keys and truly random processes to get the same stuff out on the other side.
Have you seen that lava lamp wall? I think it's Cloudflare uses that to help theoretically. I mean, at this point, it's probably just smoke and mirrors and show. But
the coolest description of how to get really random stuff is in one of the Tom Clancy books that he wrote in the early 90s, and it's taking a reflection off of a certain point in the troposphere, and whatever the interference you get back is, you use that for your randomness.
That would be pretty freaking random.
Yeah,
be pretty.
So it's the noise off of the troposphere that you get when you shoot a certain frequency up there, and you can change the frequency, your center frequency, and you'll get different noise. Or you can take harmonics off of that if you really want to get really crazy.
Somebody is listening now and going, "Oh man, I don't know what they're talking about, but I just love that these guys are having fun here." So, okay, can you explain to the audience why, if you go into a computer and you hit generate between 1 and 10, that's not truly random?
So it's called quasi-random because it uses a predictive logarithm. So it starts from somewhere, and if you can figure out what the start point is, you can figure out the end point. So it's not truly random. So the big problem that you have in some forms of cryptography is generating the randomness. So that's why you keep seeing bigger and bigger codes. So it was 128 and 256 and 4,000. So it goes all the way up. The bigger the code, the harder it is to figure out the starting point where that came from to generate that code. But given enough time and enough compute power, you'll get there.
Well, and there's an inherent problem with IT in general, if you think about it, in that, like, literally I just had no time apparently, but the source of binary is literally a philosopher's attempt at distilling logic down to a base, and he came up with I and O. It wasn't even ones and zeros at the time. He came up with I and O. Originally, it was yes and no. Yes and no is like the base of logic. And then somebody else was like, surely we can distill it more. And they came up with I and O. And then I think it was a graduate student looked at that and was like, whoa, that looks like an open and closed circuit. And then we have binary. But you're starting at, if we were to just.
Well, it was an electrical engineer that thought about the open and closed circuits.
Okay.
So how do I
Thank
put this?
you.
How do I put this into? How do I put this onto something that's not an analog brain?
Yeah.
How do I count it? How do I track it? It was an electrical engineer that came up with that, and that's how they were able to do it. So it's on or off.
Yes. Which, okay. So, and the point here is that is the base of technology, which is a logic string, and
Yep.
random exists in a world of chaos.
Correct.
And yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's
And it
anyway.
might have been an electrical engineering graduate student. I don't know, but it was an electrical engineer who figured out on and off circuits.
Yeah, and hey, I
how
mean,
you could
look,
how you could recommend it, and that's what Morse code is. Morse code is on or off.
yes.
So
yeah,
you
yeah.
put so it's there's a tone or there's no tone, on or off. So all of our computers are built off of Morse code.
That's just so wild to me because the quantity of, I mean, to go from that
That's how far we've
to
come
you
in
and I are
150
staring
years.
at each other.
That's how far we've come in 150 years.
But we really just built off that. It all ends up back at that.
It 150 years ago, they're going do 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 across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Right. Or across, or across, from the battlefield back to the headquarters, and it's just a wire, and it either has a signal or it doesn't have a signal.
And fax machines are literally that on audio form over.
Fax machines are well. Let's be
okay.
clear.
Well, all right.
Fax machines take an analog image, convert it into a digital code, and then it stores, and I'll make it simple. It stores a file, then it dials a modem, and that modem's talking over there, and it's using something called baudit code. And baudit code, and what is a baud? It's a description of how many 8-byte pieces you can put across it, right? So it's really converting the digital data that's on the picture to a tone, a prearranged tone. It could be anything, but they chose an audible tone across the telephone wires because you're used to talking over telephone wires, and it sends it across that wire to another modem that decodes it, turns it back into baudit code, turns it back into a digital representation of that baudit code, and puts it onto a piece of paper. It's all ones and zeros. It's all on and off. Signal, no signal.
So, okay. How long were you in the Navy for?
I was in the Navy from 86 to 92.
Okay.
I got married in 1990 before I deployed to the Persian Gulf War. I came back in late 1991 after 300 days of being in the Persian Gulf, and got out of the Navy in early 92, March of 92.
Okay. Was getting married the big catalyst to getting out? What was kind of the decision to get out?
I had seen my wife I'd been married for 18 months, and I had seen her for maybe 30 days in that 18 months. So it was like, I'm not going to stay.
Yeah, that would do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how people pull off families.
I didn't even have kids. I didn't have kids till later.
You got out. What was it like making that transition to the private sector? And what was your first job? Again,
my first job was at GE, where I was working with, in their GE Information Services, and I was working on, that was their, what they called a value-added network, which was their, they had a couple of products. It was EDI and Genie. So Genie was like the competitor to AOL.
Okay.
So I was working in their communications department, and then I got put on a tag team because I happened to know something about TCP/IP when they were trying to open Genie up to the internet.
Wow. Okay. All right. So GE had a competitor to AOL?
Yeah, it's called Genie.
Okay. Okay. And
CompuServe was another competitor too at the time.
Okay.
AOL won. That's why you've never heard of the other two.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, even though one of them may have been better. That's yeah. Um,
The whole question of better at that point is the number of users. So it was an acquisition of users. So it was easier for me to so if I wanted to have my AOL chat, I couldn't have AOL chat from Genie.
yeah.
If I wanted to have my AOL.com email, I couldn't have that from somewhere else.
Yeah. I
So
think that CD, I mean, not that I know of any other way to have deployed it. I mean, I just those CDs were everywhere.
CDs,
In a world where CDs were
floppy
super
drives,
popular.
floppy drives, the small. You're probably too young to remember the big floppy drives, the 5.5-inch discs. They put them out on 5.5-inch discs too. And then they had the 3-inch disc, and then they put them on CDs.
Zip drives?
No,
No, sorry.
no,
I've seen them.
floppy
If
drives.
that makes anything.
Yeah,
I've seen them only because I worked as a recycler there. You see all sorts of stuff.
I
as a
probably have
recycler.
one somewhere back over here somewhere.
Yeah, I've had plenty of folks were like, you know what this is? And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I don't. You're gonna have to explain it
Yeah.
to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, I got a Netscape Navigator CD once. So it's
Oh.
like, I wish I'd kept it.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about that process. Tell me about that. I mean, this is you're building the internet in the world where the internet isn't popular yet. Literally.
Yeah. Literally.
So what was that process like? What was
Well,
losing like? Is that why'd you get out of it? What change?
So I was.
What did you tell other people? I'm building the internet. Oh,
no, we didn't.
Quit wasting your time.
It wasn't that
Go write
way
a book.
then. It wasn't like that then. But I was I wasn't like I was a junior. I was a junior guy at GE, and we had done a deal with a company called UUNet. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. But the UU and UUNet was for Unix copy protocol, and that was how you would do email between.
Was that English? Sorry, UUNet,
UUNet, UUCP, Unix to Unix copy protocol.
Unix to Unix. Okay, now I know what you're saying. Okay,
so
good.
That's how you would take mail from one system to another system before the widespread adaptation of SMTP.
Okay.
So we would do internally. So we're a company. We have an internal email system before we had the internet. So we had an internal email system. We could talk to anybody in our company, but we couldn't talk to Fred's company. So GE Information Services couldn't talk to GE Aircraft without the Unix to Unix copy protocol. Because we had different mail systems. And I'm trying to make an example. So that's what it was. UUNet came out, I want to say in 93, but I could be off by a year either way. And they were selling, we'll take your UUCP mail and we'll send it off to anybody, or we'll pull it into the internet and we'll send it out over the internet. So that's how UUNet started. We connected GE's systems to UUNet with UUCP. And that's how we got email out to the world back in 1992 and 93. And I was doing some noodling, and I'm like, for $30 million, we could own the internet. So I made that presentation to the head of GE Information Services, and she goes, "No, it's a fad." So I left, and I started a company called Planetcom, which was selling internet services. And then right then, Netscape came out, and Mozilla, the browser, and we went from a text-based www to a graphics-based www, and I started selling internet dial-up. I started selling internet connections. I started doing internet consulting services after I left GE.
What kind of a world would it be if you had won that? I mean, the way you simplified it was we can own the internet for $30 million.
Yeah. GE could have with their marketing power. I couldn't. even if I had $30 million.
Yeah, but what had happened if you'd win that bid? Just wouldn't have been AOL. It would have been GE.
It would have been GE.
All right.
And it wouldn't have been MCI. It would have been GE. It wouldn't have been AT&T. It would have been GE as the plumbing for the internet.
I understand. Yes. Okay.
So all the apps and everything on top of that, that's different. But the core internet connectivity could have been GE's for $30 million in 1993.
Okay, which a mass majority of it right now is AT&T under the hood. Like I know a lot of the even a lot of the secondary carriers, last mile tends to be AT&T somewhere.
Well, don't get me into that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get.
You're getting ahead of the story. You're getting ahead of the story.
Okay, all right. Well, but I'm learning so much. Like, I mean, there would have been a competitor, I guess, to SMTP, but I don't think about that now.
Well, it wasn't a competitor. It was a predecessor.
Okay, and for folks that don't know, SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, it's literally the protocol that we converse via email on. Yep. When I shoot you an email, the whole reason they can talk is because of that protocol.
It's a standard protocol, yeah. And we can thank a guy named Vince Cerf and his team for that.
Which you knew and or interfaced with, or
I knew Vince Cerf. He actually lived next to my former in-laws. Lived next door to my former in-laws.
Okay.
So
you said I'm getting ahead of the story. Let's progress on. So you start a business.
I started a business
point.
selling internet connectivity and email services to businesses and organizations in the DC area. I worked with C-SPAN to get their first internet server on the net to use to broadcast their live feeds from the Congress floor out to the internet. We were talking about it the other day. I was talking to the guys who were there, and C-SPAN's first over the internet broadcasts could have only 12 simultaneous subscribers. Otherwise, they'd shut everything down. They would be oversubscribed. So think about that. Was in probably 94, 95 timeline. So they were the first to broadcast on the internet. They were broadcasting what the C-SPAN. I don't know if you know what C-SPAN is.
Yeah, I got it. If I'm quiet, I'm just I'm soaking it in here, man. I'm appreciating it.
And then I wrote a program for C-SPAN to capture their video feed, convert it to a JPEG, and send it up to their internet service every 90 seconds. So they had the audio feed that they were streaming, and then we would superimpose a captured JPEG. It was just a C program and a Python script, or Perl script actually at the time. And we would capture a JPEG off their video feed and send it up to their website to replace the homepage. So you get a new picture up there. And this was before video streaming.
This is back in the day.
This is 94, 95.
I go onto their website. I see something from 90 seconds ago.
You see a picture of Senator Chuck Schumer, who's still there, by the way, or Bob Dole. You get a picture of one of those two people up there in front of the Senate going blah, 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 blah. And you could stream his voice, and you get a new picture every 90 seconds.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Back in the world of just a fad.
Back in the day when it was just a fad. And it was really difficult.
We've got to take a tangent here now. Okay. So you were on the forefront of the internet. You quite literally helped build it.
I was on the forefront of the internet, but let's be clear. I wasn't building I was building the infrastructure around the internet. I'm not smart enough to design the protocols or come up with the company. It was just, here's something cool. Let's go do it. And here's what we have to do. This is the servers, the network, the routers, and what have you that we need to do it. So,
but that's why this is perfect.
When you say,
I understand.
Build the internet. If I built the internet, I wouldn't be working today.
No. Yes. No. Okay. Well, all right. So in that vein of let's be specific here, you're more of almost kind of the business element of it, right? Somebody brings you something very technical. You can understand it well enough, but then you can also be like, here's how we deploy that to everybody. I'll help sell it. So this is why you're the perfect person to ask, do you think AI is a fad?
No.
Do you see correlations between the early SMTP versus
I was talking with the guy who I built a company with back in the later, like 97 to 2000, and we built a CLEC, or a competitive local exchange company, based upon all the rules that came around when the 86 telecommunications derate, or when they split AT&T up. And we built a CLEC. We built out a network in 22 U.S. cities. We spent a lot of money, and then we got tied up in the dot-com crash. I like to joke we raised $300 million, and we spent $350 million in 3 years. And when the bill for that came due, we had real customers, we had real growth. But if you can't convert the debt to equity, you got to start paying the interest on the debt. We imploded. So, but I was talking with him. We were out at CES earlier last month, out at the Consumer Electronics Show, and we were talking about this AI. And he was one of those guys that he's kind of riding the investor wave of. He was an investor in a company that bought my company. I sold my company, and then I built another company with him starting in 97, and we were talking about where is AI, and we see AI as the internet was in 95. So it's just at the cusp of there's going to be an overbuild of the infrastructure, and it seems to be happening faster than it did back then, because all of the VCs and all of the private equities and all of the capital markets and the allocation of capital kind of got built in that kind of time frame back in the 80s and 90s. Now it's much more sophisticated, so you can raise capital faster. So it's a more accelerated timeline, but they're going to build the infrastructure. We're going to be looking for something to do with the infrastructure, and whatever they're going to do with that infrastructure is going to be something that's even more than we can even imagine. So if you're talking to me in 95, would I say that I would be talking over the internet face to face with somebody in Missouri? I'd say no. It's going to be text. We can't do real-time video. It's too expensive, too bandwidth intensive. But we're sitting here we can't even imagine what we're going to be using AI for in 5 years, but we're going to be using it because it's going to be doing a lot of things. Now, the one thing that's going to hamper its growth is our power infrastructure, because we don't have enough power to charge all the EVs that we're going to be having coming online theoretically in the next 5 years, much less drive all of that. And there's a real problem with the electrical grid and being able to keep up with it.
So, and I'm curious too, when we started to make the comparison of the internet, and when you said it reminds me of 05 and
95, 95.
Right, 95, thank you.
10
when
years
you said
before
all
05.
that, right, and before 03, before the dot-com
that was
crash,
in 2000.
if you
that
will.
was in 2000, yeah.
2000, okay.
I still have the scars from the dot-com crash.
I'm accelerating timelines again. I'll have to be careful.
Yeah.
We'll come to those scars, but we're going to put a pin in that. Do you think, no, I want to get to the scars. Do you think that'll happen? Because look, here's the thing that I think people miss. So the people that say AI is a fad, that's like saying the internet is a fad. The internet existed past the dot-com crash.
So were automobiles. So were steam engines. So was the telephone. So was the television. It is a complete revolutionary way that we're going to so it's a revolutionary technology, and we haven't figured out how we're going to be using it 5 years from now, much less 10 years from now, much less 30 years from now.
So the point there is there will probably be a market correction, but it's still going to be the thing that continues on.
So if you look at where
sorry, we're getting high level business. I want to get back to your story, but
so capital allocation is much more efficient today than it was back then.
Okay.
If we're in 95, there's way too little investment in the internet in 95. Way too little investment in the internet. By 99, there was way too much investment in the internet. And so I'm hesitant to say that, because we might have too much investment now we'll eventually get to where we have too much investment, and then we'll have a crash or a correction, and then they'll have to reallocate that capital and figure out what we're going to actually use what we built for. Because what happened between 95 and 2003 is we built out tens of thousands of miles of connectivity with fiber optics. And then we came up with a way to make that fiber optics that were deployed much more efficient with something called DWDM. So we were able to multiplex light frequencies across that same fiber. So instead of needing 5 pieces of fiber, we could have 1 piece of fiber with 5 frequencies on it. And then then there was a glut of fiber, and I'm talking about the infrastructure that's actually in the ground from the building to building that connects everything. So there was an overinvestment there because we just made that 5 times more efficient. So then people started Lucent, who was at the forefront of that DWDM. They bought a company called Uri Systems that was able to that came up with that, and they crashed, and that kind of brought down the whole market. Because like, what are we doing? What are we doing with all these companies? What are we doing with all these crazy half-baked ideas? And I see some of that happening where, oh, we're going to have an agent that's going to do my dating apps for me. Well, that's not a very efficient use of of compute. But maybe if we have an agent that's going to manage the CEO's calendar, that might be a better way to do it than to do it on a dating app. And I'm just making that up. Or we're going to have one of my current customers is AI that does subclinical support. So they do they take all the data and they do kind of a triage of what's going on with the patient, and then they present an answer to a clinician to say these are the 3 things I would do next. Or the clinician could say, what's going on with this X-ray, and it can read it. So it's subclinical support for. That's a really good use of AI. Is that going to get better? Yeah. Is it going to replace a doctor? Right now, if it's outside of the reach of a screen or a keyboard, AI can't do it.
Well, to your point about replacement, I don't even efficiency. I was at we got a kiddo on the way, and we're the radiologist. We must have been there for, I mean, look, time moves differently in my head. At least 15 minutes, maybe it felt like 30 to an hour, watching her measure tailbone to top of head. It's like and each and every one. And she's having to get multiple pictures. And I even said, I was like, hey, AI, I think I've seen where it's like measuring bones and stuff.
Well,
she's like, yeah, but it needs a super clear image right now.
Well, it needs a super clear image. And more importantly, who holds the liability for a misdiagnosis if AI does it? Right now,
you would hope the hospital, right?
I
mean, the radiologist.
So how does the radiologist hold liability for that if they're not involved in it? So those are all stuff that needs to be settled that aren't settled before you can have an AI. And how does the AI interact with the sonogram machine? How does the AI actually move that piece around your wife's belly as they're trying to get an image? So the AI can't do that yet.
Right.
Oculus or Optimus or whatever Elon's robot can't do that yet.
Yeah.
You can't build a robotic arm that would do that yet, like you can to spot weld a piece of a car in a factory line, because it's too analog. So if it's outside of a screen or off of a keyboard, it today, and we're recording this on February 11th, that might be different tomorrow, but today there's no way to do that. The closest thing is a self-driving in the electric cars. That's the closest thing to being AI that's outside of the compute space, let's call it.
That's another solid question, though, too. And I guess I feel like I already kind of know the answer to this, but because I wasn't in that early 95 to 05 of the .com.
Right.
The AI is the most rapidly moving technology I have ever seen, and it floors me. I was an early adopter of ChatGPT, and going from where it was, which was still pretty cool, to where it is now is night and day over
Mind-boggling. And I lived through
mind-boggling.
this is the craziest, this is the fastest technology cycle I have ever seen. It's the fast, and I'm coming up on 40 years in the business, and this is the fastest technology adaptation. It's the fastest technology life cycle that I've ever seen. And we had Moore's law, which was that the power of semiconductor compute was gonna double every 18 months. That was the founder behind Intel. And we're talking about the power of AI is doubling about every 18 days right now, it seems. But again, the limit to what we're going to be able to do right now is going to be we don't have enough power and we don't have enough chips. So that's part of why everything's so expensive. Then the other then the other thing is a lot of the AI usage right now is deeply, deeply discounted. They're not recovering their costs. They're just doing in a customer acquisition. So you're spending $20 a month for ChatGPT or whatever, and the real cost of the tokens that you're using is probably on order of $200 a month in terms of the electricity and the power and the debt service and the chips and the leases and the equipment and paying down the debt to develop it and then paying down the debt to do that. It's probably on the order of $200 a month. So what's going to happen, that price is going to come down, but what you're going to pay is going to go up. But what you're going to pay, if you're going to pay more, you're going to have to get more value than just kind of a super duper search engine or something that can, make funny pictures for X or Instagram.
I want to have a conversation on sentience, but I'm also like, man, how long can I keep on this tangent before I don't? We need to come back to.
Here's my daughter is in theater, and she hates AI. She thinks it's going to put writers and musicians and everybody out of business. And I'm like, no, it's not, because there's no way that AI is going to be able to connect with a person the way a person can connect to a person. And I gave her the example. I am a horrible actor. I can't find I don't have the tools in my my body to get into the character of somebody else. Right. And you could tell when I'm acting. She is a fantastic actor. I can't tell where she ends and the damn character she's playing begins when she's in character. Right. And that's the difference between AI and humans. There's so much empathy. There's so much experience. There's so much beyond just being able to process information in a human. And I believe it's divine. I am a Christian. I'm a Catholic. And I believe that everybody has a spark of God in them, because that's the way that he made us. That's not going to be in a silicon chip.
In his image, right?
Yeah, in his image. That's not going to be in a silicon chip. That's not going to be in a database. That's not going to be in a bunch of electrons hanging out in space when Elon gets his thing launched. That's in each individual human, and you're not going to be able to replicate that. So
we're in an interesting spot.
So if I'm going to give advice to anybody before you switch it, if I'm going to give advice to anybody who's afraid of AI, you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by a person using AI. Just like all the typists didn't get replaced by computers, they got replaced by somebody using computers.
I agree on both counts. And we're also I'm in an interesting spot in my head, because I can't argue with you, because you and I share a similar philosophy. So on one hand, it's impossible for me to argue that with you. On the other hand, I kind of get annoyed with some of my friends in IT that are like, it's a glorified text predictive. And I'm like, look, I understand the technology on the surface. I don't disagree with you. You're not wrong. On a technical level, you're true. That's true. That's correct. On another hand,
that's what your brain does.
That's what my brain does. It's a series of high school and internet and YouTube videos.
It takes the different bits of stuff that you thought or that you read or that you heard or that you experienced,
And it
and it
cobbles them
cobbles
together.
it together, and then you make inference out of that. So that our neural networks are built off how our brain processes information, and that's what they're designed to do. But what it lacks is connection. It can say, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing, and blah, 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 blah. And there it is. Right. So I also don't know, and this is one of the things that catches me out when I'm talking about this. I don't know if it can do original thought. I don't know that it will ever be able to do original thought. It can do original inference, but is it going to be able to come up with the theory of relativity or the next theory of relativity? Is it going to help the next Einstein come up with whatever's going to take us, to go from chemical to whatever the next.
So okay,
to
James,
get to the warp engine in Star Trek, we need a different type of power. Is AI going to get us there? I don't know if it can. I don't know if it's able to do those kinds of leaps of thought. I don't know that it ever will, based on learning language models or large language models.
And this is the bit. So it runs into some philosophy we have which is if we have stood on the shoulders of giants, if we have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. Isaac Newton. I don't know how much, like in a lot of cases, our original thought, I hate to say it, I want to put it in quotations, but I also, I don't want to disagree with you. I think we do hold, we're in his image. I think we do hold something sacred. But on the same token, most of what we come up with is built on something else, built on a series of rules.
Right. So
relativity is a great example.
Well, so Einstein didn't have a computer to do the math, to come up with the theory of relativity.
He had a lot of books.
He had a lot of books. He had a lot of equations. And he had a lot of graduate students doing math. Now all that can be done by a computer. And it's been 110 years.
So how hard is it from the computer to make the leap into...
Let me finish.
Okay, sorry.
It's been 110 years since he came up with the theory of relativity. We've had tremendous technological growth in those 100 years. And we built and built and built and built, but we still don't have a better theory of the universe. And it can't be that we figured it out. So we'll be able to use AI like binoculars. So we're standing on the shoulders of giants so that you can see further. But now we can use AI to get binoculars to see further down, to see further away. So it's going to be a human using AI to achieve a breakthrough, as opposed to AI making a breakthrough. I don't know that it's going to have the ability to do that. I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying I don't know how that is, because I think that
I see what you're saying.
That's part of the divine inspiration, is the ability to think beyond the next level, to be able to make the
human saying, what about this? And then giving back the theory. It's the human that had the original thought and idea.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So and again, I could be wrong. I'm not religious about that. I'm not dogmatic about that.
Sure.
I'm just saying, I just don't know how you can take a predictive model and come up with something original if it's predictive.
I understand what you're saying. The only thing that did you see where they gave it the directive, achieve XYZ at all cost? And at all costs, that term was all that was really necessary for the thing to have a sense of self-preservation. And if you had asked me, it's like, would the phrase survive at all costs? Do you believe that would have been everything you needed, Sam Sapp, to I'm going to defend myself, I'm going to lie, I'm going to cheat, I'm going to do whatever? It's like, would you that is all it took for the thing
without a human connection? Yes. That's what a sociopath is.
So we'll have sociopaths in robot form.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's jump back on track now. Thank you for that. All right. So C-SPAN, you're developing C-SPAN JPEGs. You're taking it from and it's 12 people. They're oversubscribed. So talk about then tools. What year was that?
That was 95.
That was 95. Okay, so this is a
95, yeah.
perfect spot to pick
Yeah.
up on, because you also said you got it swept away in the so are you still doing that?
So what happened was in 96, my wife came to me, maybe it was 95. 96, my wife came to me and said, I'm pregnant. And so I was building a company, and I decided to take my money off the table and put somebody else's money on the table. So I sold that company. I probably sold it a year too early. I would have made a lot more money in a year. So I sold that company to another company, and I stayed there for a year. And then I went to do a project for, then I went to that company. We built that company to be the largest privately held ISP in the nation when I left. And all we were doing was selling the ping and pipe to companies, getting people online. We sold to, Wynn Resorts in Vegas. We sold to the American Red Cross. We did a big rollout for them. I mean, we did a lot of cool stuff, getting people online, getting them connected to the internet in the mid 90s. 96. Then I after I sold my company, I was there for my required period of time, and then I left, and went and did a project for at the time it was Coopers and Lybrand, which is now PwC, inside of Cable and Wireless, trying to help them come up with a strategy to do internet stuff. And I left. I came back, and my buddy said, "Hey, I'm trying to start this thing. Do you want to come on?" So I came on, and then we built the CLEC that I referred to earlier, the Competitive Local Exchange Company. And we went through we hit the .com crash. We had raised a lot of money, and we'd spent even more money. And when we had the idea was, in that period of time, and we were talking to Bear Stearns, and little did we know they'd end up in the toilet a couple years later. But the idea was, at that time, was you would raise a debt instrument to build your company and build your infrastructure. And we spent a lot on infrastructure with Cisco and telecommunication companies and then people. And then you would do an initial public offering. You would get a 2-year window where you don't have to pay any interest on that debt. It's called a debt to equity swap. And then when you do your IPO, you can convert that debt into equity that you sell in the IPO. And then they're equity owners in the company as opposed to debt holders of the company. So you never have to pay the interest back. You never pay the debt back. They just take equity of your company when there's a liquidity event, whether it's an IPO or you're selling to another company. Well, and that works until until the music stops. And the music stops in 2000, and then we're not able to survive after that. So I went to work for Cable and Wireless. And help build out their partner services. So essentially their carrier services operations.
We have to talk about the music stopping, because this is a little bit of the crux of the podcast to some end too. So, and help me out here. So you went to a full-time gig as a result of the kids.
I ran East Coast operations for a company that was headquartered in Newport Beach, California. So I ran the East Coast.
And then you decide to go back into the entrepreneurial game.
No, not yet.
Tell me about because the CLEC.
The CLEC, I was a CTO for the CLEC.
Okay, I understand.
So I was working for the entrepreneur.
So tell me about the whole Y2K thing, because I remember that. Now look, I was younger, but I still remember like my parents stacking up on candles and the lights are going to stop working.
Well, the theory was,
at least as a kid,
the theory was when we roll, because all of the companies who built programs in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and those were the companies, the programs that were running our infrastructure, our power generation, our water bills, our banking systems. They were all built with 2-digit dates. So it was 74, 75, 76, 82, 83. What's going to happen when you go from 99 to 00? Is the computer going to think it's now 1900, or is it going to think it's now 2000? What's going to happen to all the banking all the banking data? What's going to happen to the power generation? It's really the power metering and how the power is probably going to continue to run, but you'll never be able to meter it. Is it going to is it going to shut down? Shut up? Is there now everybody's going to be the automatic triggers to turn power off are going to be triggered. What's going to happen? Nobody knew. And you could run a test, but you couldn't do it at scale. So there was a big effort to convert all dates. Essentially what the Y2K fix was, convert all dates to 4-digit dates. Then you don't have to worry about it. And a lot of people made a lot of money doing that. And part of the problem was this was happening in the late 90s. And the people who wrote the infrastructure in COBOL and Fortran, which are original programming languages back in the day, they were all retired or dead. So nobody knew. So going into the old code, figuring it all out was a process. So was it overblown? Yes.
There's still a lot of that. There's still a lot of that old code, old programmer, old program running infrastructure.
Running our power, water, and sewage. So what happens and how do you protect it? And what happens to it? It's running our airplanes. That's why we're having so many. The whole FAI blows my mind.
We're back to damn doomsday. Okay, so all right, look, CrowdStrike had just happened. I mean, we're a day or two after, and it was like, and so okay, CrowdStrike. Well, I'm specifically referring to CrowdStrike's actually an alright company. I'm specifically referring to a botched patch that grounded every airline company but Southwest that's still running on DOS something. I'm in a coffee shop and this guy says something that was, I don't even know if he realized, but it's been profound and it's sat with me ever since. This older gentleman goes, there was more thought put into Y2K and more planning and than all of a sudden all our airlines being grounded for a whole, I think it was 2 days before they had
some of them were 2 days. Yeah.
And because they had to go, so like, what a world. What a freaky world, James.
That's not understanding the risk of rapid deployment. That whole CrowdStrike thing there was an agreement between CrowdStrike and Microsoft that they could put out patches or updates for their tool without running do full regression testing against the whole kernel. So they were putting out patches, but there's some patches, if you're putting out signatures for viruses, that makes a whole lot of sense, because if you get a virus, you get a malware signature, you want to get it out to the end of devices as quickly as possible. So you don't have to go through full regression testing against it. But I think there was a disconnect somewhere, and I have no inside information between what Microsoft said you could do and what CrowdStrike thought they could do. So CrowdStrike then pushes an update that changed the binary as opposed to that changed the program as opposed to the data. Because if they're just changing the data, it's not going to affect it. But once you change the binary and then how that binary interacts with the kernel or the core operating system of the server, that took the whole thing down. And then you had to manually go in and you know it better than I do how you had to recover those. But the problem was, in my mind, a misalignment of what they should be doing and what they were allowed to do. And that's on Microsoft and on CrowdStrike, because that's the world we live in. Fast deploying third-party tools, get it out there before the bad guys get us. That's the mindset that they're in. And enough old gray guys like me aren't around to say, hey, you should think about that one before you do that. So that's where I make my money. You should think about that before we do that.
Have you read Atlas Shrugged?
Oh, years ago. So when I was in the Navy, there was no such thing as internet, phone. I mean, we got our sports scores. We got the Super Bowl scores on a teletype in the radio room. That's how long ago I was in the Navy. So when I went to the Navy, and I was at sea, I would read everything. So I've probably read all that. But yeah, I read Atlas. I read Atlas Shrugged. I read a whole bunch of stuff, and I got off on a tangent. Sorry.
No, no. It was anyway. Perfect tangent. So all right, help me out here. So CLEC, that's a pretty core infrastructure. You raise the money, and then the .com crash hits.
Yep.
So it's a lot of debt service, and like you said, the music stops, right?
Yep.
The proverbial Pied Piper shows up.
Pied Piper shows up,
and now you're unemployed.
I'm unemployed, and I have
in
no
a
money.
world where a lot of people are on,
and I have no money. And I have no money.
You have no money. Where'd the money go from when you sold your company?
It was in the CLEC and in my house.
Okay.
So
you're unemployed with no money.
Yep. Well, I have some money, but I don't have. I have months, not years. Because I've always been that guy. I've never been the guy who hit it big. I've always been the guy who got a single or, in this case, hit a home run that somebody made a great catch in the back. It just pulls it back into play, and then you're out. So I do what I always do. Is I just call my buddies and say, "Hey, what are you doing? Is there any position there that I can do with?" And I called a buddy. He said, "Talk to my boss." I talked to the boss. I became that guy's boss. That's how it worked.
How quick? What was that timeline?
Month and a half. Not very long.
Wow. All right. Way to go.
So,
that story could have gone way different.
It could have gone way different.
Like, oh no, poor James is unemployed for 6 months, wandering out. No.
One of the things that I think I learned it from Chief Smith, who was my boss, my first boss in the Navy. He said, "What goes around comes around," and he meant it in. He said, "One of it." So the chiefs are the people who run the different shops, and he was one of those one of the other shops, let's call them, so who are similar to what I was doing, but nothing close to what I was doing, came to him and said, "Hey, can I borrow Gorman or somebody like Gorman to help me do this push project?" So that meant I had to work for 24 hours straight, is essentially what that meant. And when it was done, and if, "Yes, sir, you do it." And I came back to Chief and I said, "Chief, why do you do that? Why do you send me out there to do that other guy's job?" And he said, "Because what goes around comes around. I'm going to be able to go to him and get some help when we're strapped, and he'll owe me." And I said, "Oh, so he'll owe you." And so throughout my whole career, ever since then, it's like, do you have a question? I'll help you answer it. Do you need help? I'll help you answer it. Over the years, I've probably helped 300 or 400 people who I know or somebody I know find new jobs. Every one of my family, every one of my friends, every one of, somebody's kid has graduated college. I make an introduction for them. I pick up the phone. I send an email. I send a text. Whatever. So I have a network, and I never heard it put better than when I was being sold on what school to send my daughter to. The president of that school is the guy who owns the school, or I don't know how it's set up, but the guy who runs the school is a Tony Award winning producer, Tony Award nominated actor, Tony Award nominating director. So he's at the top of his game. And he was saying, "I teach these kids that your network is your net worth. So it doesn't matter. If you have a network, you'll always be able to find net worth." So over the years, I've helped everybody that I can, and it clicked. My network is my network. I don't find jobs from LinkedIn ads. I don't find jobs from Google ads. I don't find jobs from, and whether they're jobs or customers, from, I've gotten one customer and one job. My first job out of the Navy, I submitted an ad for response to an ad in the Washington Post. And one customer called me out of the blue because he saw me on LinkedIn. But other than that, everything I've done since 1992 has been somebody I knew or somebody who knew somebody I knew to get me that job, to get me that customer. So your network is your net worth.
And AI can't replicate that. Trust isn't transferable over the internet.
It is not. It is not.
Good. So you land on your feet. Where are you working now?
For cable and wireless, I'm doing partner services operations for their global, I forget what they called it. It was Partner Services Americas, and it was all the fiber and internet services in the United States, Latin America. So our customers were France Telecom, Deutsche Telekom, Telecom of Jamaica. So that's who the customer base was, and it was supporting their big projects.
Okay. What time frame was that, and what had you move out of that?
So I moved out of that. So cable and wireless famously was one of the last buyers in the was one of the last buyers in the .com world, and they bought a big they were, because at the time they were thinking we needed to move from infrastructure of cables to infrastructure in data centers, and they bought a big data center company that had $700 billion, or they had a big bunch of debt. And again, at that point, the debt came due, and Cable and Wireless decided to exit the United States because they're a British company. They decided to exit the United States. Saw the writing on that. I got out before it completely crashed. And I did some consulting stuff around that. And then this was just before 9/11. Then just after 9/11, I started doing some I was doing some independent consulting, and then I started to work with as a subcontractor to Unisys on a couple of projects. So designing the DC, well, I'll start with the TSA, then DHS's Network Operations Center. So I was working to design build. So I did the design for Unisys for that, set up the TSA's certification accreditation office. So what are they going to allow on their network? Then that was done, and then I went and did the DC 911 call center design build. So I designed where the all the network infrastructure going into the new call center down in DC. And then I was talking to a buddy who was he had a gaming center that he was trying to turn into an MSP. I helped him turn it into an MSP, and then I went to work for one of his customers who was a payment processing company. So now we're up to about 2009, 2010. We're doing payment processing. That's where I got into needing to be PCI compliant. That's where I started getting into the CISO world.
Man, you've been at the forefront of like every technology. It really seems like payment processing in 2009.
Yep.
Versus where it is now. I was just thinking about the other day. Credit cards is the closest thing a private company that I'm aware of has come to taxing citizens.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. So
if you think about it.
So the founder of this company, his goal was to reduce the fees that people paid, and allow companies this is, before Authorize.net, right around that time, Authorize.net came out. And it was a competitor to Authorize.net, and they had some really big customers, Geico and QVC and some other big customers that they would do the transaction processing, and the whole deal there is you make money on the transaction and you make money on the payout. So you hold the money for a few days, you take the interest, and then make sure it's not fraudulent, you send it over. That's where the payment companies make their money. On the transaction and then on fractions of pennies. But if you're fractions of pennies on $700 million a year is still something, right? It's still something worth.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. That company then got bought by private equity. I got paid to sit down for 12 months. I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I got an exception to that, and I went to work for a large transaction processing company called TNS. So I ran TNS is network engineering, global security engineering, and their global operations. TNS is the largest payment company you've never heard of. Again, still involved with PCI, still involved with large networks. They're they sit behind the payment terminal and connect it to the payment processor. So from the payment terminal, they'll transact the business. So this is back when you had to have modems to pick up. When you would swipe the card, it would dial out and it would connect. It's gotten better since then. So they sit between the terminal and the payer. They also had a telecommunications business. They have network in 140 countries for payment and processors that you've heard of and processors you've never heard of. I left there in 2015, and I said, I don't want to be in a cubicle. I don't want to be in a little tiny corner office. What am I going to do? So a buddy of mine was starting up a company that was in the medical space, and he had this thing called high trust that he had to figure out, and he had no clue. This was the same guy that was at the payment company that we sold, or that he sold. So he was starting a healthcare company. He needed help. I said, I know PCI. I can help you with that. Then he had made a lot of money in the sale, so he then also started his non-compete finished from the sale. He started another payment processing company. I helped with the PCI for that. So that kind of got me into this vCISO role, where a startup company doesn't need a full-time CISO, a full-time, old gray security guy, but they need the skills, because you got a 27-year-old, 30-year-old, brilliant guy who's your architect and your programmer, but he doesn't know what he doesn't know. Right. So they don't need me there full time. They kind of need me there part time. So we worked out a deal, and then it just grew from there. And I've been doing that ever since. So that's how I ended up with Hard to Hack.
That's cool, man.
And I help, small to mid-sized companies be secure and get compliant.
What a story. We have 2 questions we like to wrap up every podcast with. So I've already told you our mantra over here is, if we've seen further, it has been by standing on the shoulders of giants. Man, I can't believe I've said that so many times. I've kind of butchered it a little bit.
I can read it right behind you.
Yeah. Who's been a giant in your life, James, that you would like to pay homage to in this moment? You mentioned quite a few of them. Is there one in particular that
I know
you want to surface?
I think I could say Chief Smith, because he taught me a lot when I was very young. But I'd have to give it to Jim Kennefick, or James Kennefick, who's a buddy of mine, who was the guy who was the financier who was behind the company that bought my company that we did the CLEC with. He invested a lot into me and into training, the different trainings that he brought me into, really understanding, going from being able to communicate the technical in a financial way. That's really been the key to my success, I think, is being able to communicate with the very technical people. And while I was at the company, the best day I ever had in that company, and it's probably the best day I ever had working, was we were building a telecommunications switch site, which is essentially a great big data center in 20 Broad Street in New York. So I traveled up to New York night before, went out to dinner with the guys. We were at 7:00 in the morning. We were in the data center turning screwdrivers and hooking up cables. And then in the afternoon, I'm giving a presentation in the boardroom at Bear Stearns, in one of the high rises overlooking the Hudson, out to the world. So that's probably that happened, at Jim's company, learning the language of being able to, be with the guys in the data center and then be with the guys in the boardroom and feel totally comfortable in both worlds, is kind of grew up at NetDel, and learning understanding the finance, understanding because I grew up in the technical world, but understanding the financial world, understanding how to communicate to executives, understanding how to stay short and sweet and to the point in front of an ADD investment banker. That's what I learned at NetDel.
The next question we have is if there's a pithy saying or general rule of thumb you found to be true again and again and again, what would that be? You said one earlier that
Your
you
network
could
is your
cheat
network.
yeah. Is that it?
Your network is your net worth is one. I think I think that the other one I'm going to steal from Jocko Willink, who is a podcaster, a motivational speaker, a former Navy SEAL.
Extreme Ownership.
Yeah,
Good book.
extreme ownership, and it's about pushing through. I feel like quitting, but not today. I'll quit tomorrow, not today.
I'm going to steal that. I don't know if I knew he said that.
I'll send you the thing.
I've used that mindset for quitting. I don't
feel good. I don't feel good. I'm going to take a break. I'm tired. Not today. I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah.
You can use that reverse for quitting smoking or any sort of nicotine. You say I'll pick it back up tomorrow. I'll pick it back up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Not this gas
Not today.
station. I'll go pick up the cigarettes tomorrow. That's the only way I quit.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. This has been good. Thank you for that.
It's been fun, Sam.
I really appreciate having you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Hello, everybody. I wanted to thank you for listening to today's episode. It's such a blessing to be able to interview such fantastic individuals. If you're interested in listening to more, we look to post every Thursday at 10 a.m. You can find us on YouTube, Amazon Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much. Have a blessed day.